We've been talking a lot about free speech. In this next segment, we're going to talk about one of probably the most prominent journalists of my generation, Glenn Greenwald. He's been on this show multiple times. It appears that now even Glenn Greenwald may be preparing himself for a ban. Yes, believe it or not, it appears that TikTok is trying to ban Glenn Greenwald of all people. Let's get into it. Ay, ay, ay.
All right, so it's kind of ironic when you report something and then very shortly after that, you have a personal experience that in many ways verifies or vindicates the thing that you reported. So we did a segment last week knowing that we know that many of you have become convinced that TikTok is this weapon of the Chinese Communist Party that they use to get at the minds of American youth. In particular, that they're propagandizing them, they're turning against them against the country, they're filling their head with all kinds of crazy ideas. And we tried to show you that that is a false narrative. TikTok is run by a Singaporean who was born in Singapore. He's a capitalist. He went to the London School of Economics. He then went to Harvard Business School. He then worked for Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, and it was really interesting when he actually testified in front of Congress. They kept saying he was Chinese, and he's like, I'm from Singapore. And I know in his mind, he was probably thinking like, look, not every Asian person is Chinese.
They have American management, American shareholders, and the United States has become one of their most lucrative markets because of how many millions of Americans choose to use TikTok. And they don't want to be banned from the United States. They're willing to do anything to stay here. And one of the things they've been increasingly doing is saying to the United States government, look, we don't care about political speech. If you want to tell us what political speech you find damaging or dangerous, just tell us and we'll censor it. Remember, they censored the bin Laden letter once it went viral. Why would they censor the bin Laden letter, which explains to Americans or tries to convince Americans that 9/11 was the fault of the U.S. government for interfering in that region and bombing that region, if they were interested in being divisive and dividing the American people against their own government? They would love the bin Laden letter. They would let the bin Laden letter viralize. They wouldn't censor it, and yet they did censor it. And this first came up for us because we had a video in December of 2022, so a little bit more than a year ago, that was highly critical of President Zelensky and the Ukraine war and the narrative from the United States. There you see it on the screen, erasing inconvenient truths.
So pay attention to the date of the video. He said December 2022. So this is another example of these platforms actually removing old videos, right? So at the time when you posted it, they didn't seem to have a problem with it, but they have been known to go back in time and remove old videos that you may have posted.
And this video started to go rather viral. And obviously, the Chinese Communist Party wouldn't want to stop this. It was a video critical of U.S. foreign policy. That's supposedly what the Chinese Communist Party wants. They want people hearing content like what we produce that is critical of the U.S. government, the U.S. security state. Mm-hmm. And yet, we got a notice. There you see it on the screen. Video removed. This video violates our community guidelines. It was a segment like the one I just did about the lies around the war in Ukraine. There you see the video details Ukraine President Zelensky is a corrupt authoritarian oligarch, despite what Western media is trying to tell you. And the reason cited was integrity and authenticity. Trust forms the foundation of our community. We do not allow activities that undermine the integrity of our platform or the authenticity of our users.
Wordy language. Trust forms the foundation of our community. We do not allow activities that undermine the integrity of our platform or the authenticity of our users. Meaning what? Provide some examples, TikTok, right? Like, what are you talking about? That could be anything, anything.
We got an account warning for that, and it said your account is at high risk of being restricted based on your violation history. The next withdrawal could result in being prevented from accessing some features. Now, we thought it was very strange since this was actually the first time this has ever happened.
So sorry, I want to correct myself and make sure you guys realize it says video violation posted on December 28th, 2022. So they looks like they did tag that at that point in time again, but typically what these platforms will not do is they will not explain to you what exactly you did wrong, right? It's just vague, like what I just read to you. Like, what does that even mean? Or they'll say things like, at least YouTube has done this to people before. They'll say that this is harassment, but they won't say what it was that was said in the video that was that. And again, that's intentional.
And we appealed this removal, and we actually won. They looked at it, they reinstated it, and they removed this warning from our permanent record. The only other time we've had any issue with TikTok was with this video in June of 2023, where we reported on how the CIA had flown to Brazil as part of the 2022 election, basically, according to the US, to warn the Brazilians not to use the sort of election fraud claims that Trump had used and that Bolsonaro was threatening to use if he lost. But it was the CIA flying to Brazil in the middle of the Brazilian election to basically intervene and say, this thing that Bolsonaro is threatening to do, we're not going to accept it. And the reporting on this was very reliable. It was from mainstream outlets.
Not only that, but he lives in Brazil. Just something to consider.
And we did a video, and actually you see there it was, we put Portuguese subtitles on the screen so that Brazilians could hear it as well. This was probably our most viral video on TikTok ever, certainly one of them. It really went viral. And we got the same kind of notice. Video removed. The video violates our community guidelines. Here you see the CIA's benevolent interference in Brazil. And the same rationale cited. Now, let me ask you this question. If the Chinese Communist Party were censoring TikTok and controlling its content, why would the Chinese government be angry that we publish a video on CIA involvement in Brazil? Wouldn't that be something they would want?
That part right there. That's something you need to think about, guys.
If this narrative is true that they're using TikTok to turn the government, the people of the United States against their own government, they would love our show. Our show is overwhelmingly a critique of the U.S. government and the U.S. security state and U.S. foreign policy.
And all the videos on TikTok where people are criticizing the U.S. government, criticizing the deep state, criticizing the alphabet letter agencies, they would love those too. Because it's critical of the U.S. government. It's not critical of China. So let that sink in, guys. Again, this is another example where I feel like the propaganda machine was to turn you away from outlets like TikTok because they knew some of the things people are saying on there is the truth, but it's not the narrative that the State Department has. So they don't want you to hear that narrative. That's really what that's all about. It's not about, no, we don't want you to use TikTok because China could be trying to steal our data. That's just an easy excuse for them to give and to get you to fearmonger China more, right? But the real thing is they don't really want free speech because free speech endangers the narrative that comes from the State Department. They want you to be controlled. They don't want us to think for ourselves. They want to tell you what to think. That's the crazy part.
Why would TikTok be targeting our show if it were run by the Chinese Communist Party and removing videos critical of U.S. foreign policy. That makes no sense whatsoever. It would only make sense, the only people angry by these kinds of videos from our show would be the U.S. security state, the thing we criticize.
Yep.
The entity that has previously tried to think of ways to prosecute me when I went around the world reporting on all their secret documents as part of the Snowden reporting. When I was at The Intercept, where we often publish secret documents about their drone program and their FBI spying programs. My good friends in the U.S. security state, those are the people who would want our content censored. And that is exactly who is commandeering the TikTok content moderation. Mm-hmm. This time we did appeal, and it did not get reinstated. This video was removed. We had this strike against us, but this is the only strike that we ever knew about. This week, our social media manager went to access TikTok to post, and she got this notice. Your account was permanently banned due to multiple violations of our community guidelines.
This part right here. By the way, this has happened to Midwestern Marks multiple times on TikTok. It happened to RBN on TikTok. Like, it's happened to other people who are criticizing, particularly the U.S. government, who are telling the truth, you know, in reference to some of the foreign policy decisions that the U.S. government has made. It typically is coming after people that cover foreign policy often is something that I've noticed. But that same notification.
Permanently banned. Our account was permanently banned, our system update account. The only thing we use this account for is to post clips of this show. When we appealed it or asked for some kind of explanation, they sent this email. Thank you for contacting TikTok. We understand how important your account is to you. After further review, your account will remain permanently banned due to a violation of our integrity and authenticity policy.
So here we have TikTok permanently banning one of the most prominent journalists of my generation. Like, do they even know who Glenn Greenwald is? Glenn Greenwald, who revealed the Edward Snowden story? Do they even know who this is? And I don't even like brag about people like this, but the thing is like, there are certain journalists that just kind of stand out in your lifetime. For those of you who may have been around during the Vietnam War, that person for you may have been like Seymour Hersh. More recently, also for, I think, a lot of younger people, his article about the Nord Stream pipeline too. So some people are just discovering him now because of that. But we all had that. There's a certain voices, right? So we got to think about Glenn Greenwald started The Intercept, wanted to publish the Hunter Biden laptop story. They wouldn't allow him to. That's why he left The Intercept. Continued to do his own thing. But it's just like, that's who they banned? They just want you to dance, right? TikTok, they want you to get on there and just shake your booty, show people how to do dance moves, keep the world unintelligent and unbothered, keep you distracted. Go back and watch the music video, This Is America. Go back and watch that music video. I want you to watch it twice. The first time, watch it and listen to the sound. So have the sound on so you're hearing the lyrics. The second time you watch it, I want you to watch it on mute and just pay attention to the visual. Americans are distracted. That's something that music video did point out, how they keep us distracted with all these other things. Now, that one's typically about Black America, but it happens to everybody. They keep you distracted with all these other things. So they want you to go on TikTok and watch people do dance videos, and no shade. Not saying you can't dance. But they don't want you to see the real information about the government, about foreign policy. They don't want you to see these things. As if that's not important. They want us to remain dumb.
Please note that our community guidelines apply to both public and private videos, and that was it. We could not get any kind of an answer on why it is that our account is banned, but we know that it's permanently banned. We can't get an answer why. I hope this forever debunks this notion that the people controlling the censorship decisions of TikTok are the Chinese Communist Party. They have turned over, TikTok has, these decisions to the U.S. security state, just like the U.S. security state influences and controls the censorship decisions of Facebook and Google and in the pre-Musk era of Twitter. Because they have used this threat to ban TikTok as a way to say, the only way we're going to let you stay is if you censor the things we want.
So why would China ban Glenn Greenwald? They wouldn't. What has happened to TikTok? I saw JB said in the chat that some of the people that used to work for the NSA are now working for TikTok.
This also shows, by the way, imagine if we had the show and there was no Rumble, no platform that said to us, we're going to guarantee you the right of free speech. And we were dependent on big tech, on Google's YouTube, on Instagram owned by Facebook, on TikTok. Do you see what a stranglehold there is on free speech in the West? Do you see this? Say what you want about our show and my views, but our reporting is extremely fact-based. I've been doing this for 20 years now. I've won every journalism award that the West has to offer.
Yeah, I mean, Glenn Greenwald is an actual journalist. I mean, I'll just keep it real. Like, I don't even call myself a journalist. I write every now and then. I'll be writing more next year. But I don't even call myself a journalist. I say I'm a host of this show. And that's pretty much it. But Glenn Greenwald is a real investigative journalist. And they banned him. It's just like, and I wonder, did they even know who they were banning? Like, they realized what this, very strange, very strange.
There's no journalist in the United States that has won as many. Maybe there are some who have won as many, but none who have won more.
No.
And our show, if you watch it, you know that we are very careful to adhere to facts, usually facts that are easily demonstrable on the public record. We don't spread disinformation. We don't rely on conspiracy theories. This is purely content-based. Now, the last 2 months of our show has been overwhelmingly dedicated to a critique of the U.S. funding of the war in Israel and the war in Israel itself. I don't know if that's a factor, but I know that our show in general is a critique of the U.S. foreign policy state and of the censorship regime. We also did criticize TikTok as well. So who knows why, but look at how arbitrary and capricious this is. If your livelihood, if your ability to be heard rests on big tech, you're just in the palm of their hands. They can squeeze it at any time. And it's so Kafkaesque, they don't even give you a reason.
And this is why, and I will give this advice to anybody that does independent media. Of course, like legacy independent media, most of them already do this anyway. But this is why people they wear different hats, like in this space, right? So I'm on YouTube, but I'm also on Rumble and Rockfin and Spotify and just different platforms, right? So that's why more of us are on like multiple platforms. This is also why some people that are commentators for independent media also are authors, are writing books or write articles, or they may host like a radio show. Like, think about some of the people like Chris Hedges, Margaret Kimberly, Matt Taibbi. Like, they have multiple things that they do, right? They're not just like on YouTube. And I think that's very important. It's sad that it has to even come to that, not saying that they wouldn't want to do those things as well. But what I am saying is that now it has gotten to the point where you pretty much need to do that. You need to be on multiple platforms. I will say this to anyone, and I beg of you multiple times, if you're coming into this new, and I'm still kind of new myself, but it's almost been 3 years now, you have to be on multiple platforms. I would not just take a risk and just be on YouTube. So I beg to any of you that are interested in starting this to be on multiple platforms. I'm not the best on TikTok. I'm there, but I don't post videos often. And when I do, they usually don't do well. I'm not a good TikToker or whatever. But this is very damning that they would do this to Glenn Greenwald. Not just a real journalist, but he's won multiple awards. He's known around the world. It's not like this is someone that people don't know. Like, that's what kills me. Like, of all the people, really? I'll let him finish up here.
They give you no explanation at all, let alone an opportunity to appeal or be heard. They just send you a form letter saying, no, you're permanently banned and that's going to remain that way forever.
Yep.
This is why platforms like Rumble are so important, because if we had to rely on this, I can imagine how nervous we would have to be about what YouTube allows, what Google will say we can say, what we can't say. Every time you get a strike against you on a video, you're petrified that the next one might result in the destruction of your show, your destruction of your ability to be heard.
Yep.
The range of views they allow was extremely narrow. And that's why I think this fight for free speech is the most important.
Okay, so you have to... We're ready to move on to the next screen on Type VNC. This is crazy. This is crazy. So again, like I said, for all those people who said that they were pro free speech, where are you now? Where are you now? Where's Elon Musk? Elon, yes, you did a good thing with the Twitter files. We covered that on the show. But where are you now? Like, see, this is the thing, right? JB says, my TikTok channel is throttled heavily because of what I talk about and share.